Welcome back to Stone Creek Farm. The world outside can wait. You are standing at the threshold of the farmhouse kitchen, and the evening has already begun to settle into something softer, something slower, something that wraps itself around you like a well-worn blanket that has been passed down through generations. The autumn rain has been falling for hours now, steady and patient and unchanging, drumming its ancient rhythm against the window panes. You hear it even from here, even before you step fully inside, even before you cross from the outside world into this sanctuary of warmth and light. The sound is everywhere and nowhere at once, a gentle percussion that wraps itself around the old stone walls and seeps into the very bones of this place, into the mortar and the timbers and the foundation stones that have been here for longer than anyone can remember. You pause for just a moment, your hand resting on the cool iron handle of the kitchen door. Simply listen. The rain is not hurried. The rain is not impatient. The rain does not demand anything of you. It simply falls, the way it has fallen on this farm for hundreds of years, soaking into the earth and running in silvery ribbons down the slate roof above your head, collecting in the stone gutters and flowing down the spouts into the rain barrels that stand at each corner of the farmhouse. Different notes of it, the way it sounds when it hits the roof tiles, different from the sound it makes against the glass windows, different again from the soft patter it creates when it lands on the stone pathway that leads from the barn to the kitchen door. Take a deep breath. The cool evening air fills your lungs. Your shoulders drop just a little as you exhale. The tension of the day begins to release its hold on your body. The day behind you is finished. The work in the fields is done. The last of the tomatoes have been harvested, carried in from the garden in wooden crates and woven baskets, their weight satisfying in your arms as you made trip after trip from the garden rows to the farmhouse kitchen. The animals are fed and settled in the barn. The horses, Barley and Bramble, are standing side by side in their stalls, their heads lowered in that peaceful drowsiness that comes when the light begins to fade and the day's work is complete. Barley, the massive Belgian draft with his golden coat and blonde mane, is resting one enormous hoof, his weight shifted to one side in the way that horses do when they feel completely safe and have no need to remain alert. His coat glows even in the dim light of the barn, and you remember how he looked this afternoon when you brought him in from the paddock, his muscles rippling beneath that golden hide, his mane flowing like silk in the autumn breeze. Bramble, the older dark bay with his deep brown coat and black mane that shines like polished wood, is standing close beside him, their heads nearly touching, sharing warmth and companionship the way they always have. The chickens are roosting in the hen house, settling onto their perches with soft clucking sounds that fade into silence as sleep takes them. The colonel stands watch on the highest perch, his golden feathers fluffed out against the cooling evening air. The ducks, Puddle and Splash, are tucked into their floating house on the edge of Mirror Lake, the water around them dark and still as glass, reflecting the grey sky above like a perfect mirror. The Highland cows, Bessie and Buttercup, those gentle giants with their shaggy ginger fur and long horns, are sheltered in the old barn, lying in the deep straw bedding. They chew their cud with slow, rhythmic movements, their eyes half closed, completely at peace. And now you are here, you are home, you are stepping into the warmth of the kitchen, and the door closes softly behind you with a gentle click, a sound so familiar that you barely notice it. But it is there nonetheless, a punctuation mark that separates the outside world from this inner sanctum. The click seems to make the rain sound even more distant, even more like a lullaby being sung just for you, a gentle backdrop to the evening ahead. The kitchen is glowing. That is the only word that feels right, the only word that captures the quality of light and warmth that fills this space. The wood stove in the corner radiates heat, its iron belly full of crackling birch logs that pop and hiss as the sap heats and expands. Firelight flickers through the grate in warm, dancing patterns that play across the exposed stone walls and the wide plank floor. The flames are visible through the small glass window in the stove door, dancing and leaping in shades of orange and yellow and red, hypnotic in their movement. The overhead beams, those thick timbers of honey-colored wood that were cut from trees that grew in the forest of Deep Pine Ridge over 100 years ago, seem to absorb the glow and give it back in softer shades, turning the whole room into a place that feels like it exists outside of time, outside of worry, outside of the modern world with its rush and noise and endless demands. The farmhouse kitchen has always been the heart of Stone Creek Farm, and tonight it holds you the way it always does, with warmth and steadiness and the quiet promise that there is nowhere else you need to be, that this moment is complete in itself, that you have everything you need right here within these stone walls. Your gaze wanders slowly around the room, taking in the familiar shapes and textures with the kind of attention that comes when you are finally still, finally present, finally able to see what has always been there. The large farmhouse sink, deep and white with a faint crazing of age that looks like a spider's web across the porcelain, sits beneath the window where rain streams down the glass in soft, wandering trails. The sink is so deep that you can wash the largest pots without water splashing over the sides. It has served this kitchen faithfully for decades, maybe even a century. The counter beside it is old butcher block, worn smooth by years of use, the wood grain prominent and beautiful, with lighter and darker sections that speak of the different growth rings in the tree it came from. And tonight the counter is covered with the last harvest of summer tomatoes. They are piled in wooden crates and woven baskets, their skins glowing red and orange and deep crimson in the firelight, creating a still life that could have been painted by one of the old Dutch masters. The kind of abundance that speaks of a good growing season and fertile soil and careful tending. Some are perfectly round and smooth, unblemished and symmetrical. Others are heirloom varieties, lumpy and misshapen, their shoulders creased and their bottoms pointed or dimpled, their colors mottled with streaks of gold and green and even purple. These are the tomatoes that carry old genetics, that taste like tomatoes, used to taste before the flavor was bred out in favor of shelf life and uniform size. They smell like sunshine, like warm earth, like the peak of summer captured in fruit form. The scent reaches you even from here, that bright, slightly sweet scent that carries with it the memory of long afternoons in the garden, of bending to pluck them from the vine with a gentle twist, of feeling their weight in your palm, and knowing from that weight whether they were ripe or needed another day or two. The smell is complex, layered with green notes from the stems and leaves, with the sweet fragrance of ripe fruit, with something earthy and vital that speaks of growth and life. Tonight you are going to preserve them. You are going to take this abundance, this gift from the soil and the sun and the rain, and you are going to seal it into jars, so that even in the coldest depths of winter, when the garden is buried under snow and the ground is frozen solid, you will have the taste of summer waiting for you in the pantry, ready to be opened and enjoyed. The work is simple, the work is slow, the work is exactly what this quiet evening calls for. You step further into the kitchen, and as you do, you notice Miller. He is lying in his usual spot, sprawled out on the thick wool rug in front of the wood stove, his shaggy grey body rising and falling with the slow, heavy rhythm of a dog who has already begun to drift toward sleep. His white head rests on his enormous paws, and his eyes are half closed, watching you with that calm, protective gaze that has always made you feel safe. Miller is old now, a retired Old English sheepdog who has earned his rest after years of working. He moves through the farmhouse with a slow, deliberate heaviness that somehow makes the space feel even more peaceful, more settled, more like a place where time moves differently. Firelight catches in the rough texture of his coat, making the grey fur look almost silver in places, highlighting the white of his head and chest. He does not get up when you enter. He simply thumps his tail once against the floor, a soft sound like a drum beaten once, a quiet acknowledgement that you are here, that you are home, that everything is as it should be. And there, on the back of one of the overstuffed velvet armchairs near the hearth, is Fig. The orange tabby is curled into a perfect circle, his fluffy ginger-striped body tucked into itself with his nose touching his tail, creating a complete loop of cat. His green eyes are closed in utter contentment. Fig has found the warmest spot in the room, as he always does, possessed of that feline ability to locate heat sources with unerring accuracy. His tail is wrapped around his nose, and the firelight makes his fur look like spun copper, like something precious and burnished. He does not stir. He is already dreaming, lost in whatever soft world cats visit when they sleep. You take another breath, slower this time, deeper. The warmth of the kitchen settles into your skin, into your muscles, into the quiet spaces inside you that have been waiting all day for this moment. The rain continues its gentle drumming, a sound so constant now that it has almost become part of the silence. The fire crackles and pops, sending up small showers of sparks that glow orange for a moment before fading to black. The tomatoes wait on the counter, patient and ripe, ready for the work of your hands. And you are here, standing in the glow of the farmhouse kitchen, ready to begin. There is no rush, there is no deadline, there is no clock watching you, no schedule to keep, no one expecting you to be anywhere else. There is only this, the rain, the fire, the work of your hands, and the deep bone-level knowing that you are exactly where you belong. You are safe here at Stone Creek Farm. The world outside can wait. You move toward the counter slowly, your footsteps soft on the wide planks of the kitchen floor. The wood is old and worn smooth by generations of feet. You feel the slight give of it beneath your weight, the way it has settled over decades into the shape of the stone foundation below. The boards are wide, much wider than modern flooring, cut from old-growth trees when lumber was still harvested from ancient forests. Each plank must be at least 12 inches across, and the grain runs the length of them, dark lines in the honey-colored wood that tell the story of the tree's growth. The floorboards creak in places, but it is a friendly sound, a voice the house has always had, speaking in the language of age and memory, and the settling of wood into its final shape. You do not mind it. You have always found comfort in the small sounds of this farmhouse, the way it seems to breathe and shift and settle like a living thing. Each creak tells a story. Each groan speaks of winters weathered and summers celebrated, of countless footsteps crossing these same boards, of life lived fully and well within these walls. You wonder how many people have stood where you are standing now, have prepared meals in this kitchen, have looked out these windows at the rain falling on Stone Creek Farm. The air in the kitchen is thick with warmth, almost tangible, as though you could reach out and touch it. It wraps around you as you move, soaking into your clothes and your skin, loosening the last threads of tension that have been clinging to your shoulders. Your jaw unclenches without you noticing. The wood stove is working its quiet magic, filling the room with a heat that is not oppressive but embracing, the kind of warmth that makes you want to sink into it and stay forever. The contrast is so clear now, the way the autumn evening outside is cool and damp and grey, and the way the kitchen is glowing and dry and golden. It is the perfect opposition, the kind that makes you appreciate each element more fully. The rain would not sound so soothing if you were standing in it, getting soaked, feeling the cold seep into your bones. The fire would not feel so necessary if the air were not turning crisp with the promise of winter ahead. You reach the counter and rest your hands on the edge of the butcher block. The surface is cool to the touch, even with the warmth of the room, the grain of it, the subtle ridges and valleys where the wood has been worn by years of chopping and kneading and rolling out pie crusts and bread dough. There are faint stains in places, marks from beets that turned the wood pink, from berries that left purple shadows, from the juices of 1,000 meals prepared in this very spot. The counter holds history. It holds care. It holds the steady rhythm of a life lived close to the earth, connected to the seasons, respectful of the gifts that come from soil and sun and rain. You run your fingers along the edge. A small nick here where a knife slipped years ago. A deeper groove there where something heavy was dragged across the surface. Each imperfection is a record of work done, of food prepared with these hands or with other hands in other times, a physical record of all the life that has flowed through this kitchen. You think about the hands that have touched this counter before yours, the women and men who stood here and did this same work, preserving the harvest, preparing for winter, taking care of the people and animals in their charge. You feel connected to them in this moment, part of an unbroken chain of care and attention that stretches back through time. And there, spread across the surface, are the tomatoes. You let your eyes rest on them, taking in the sheer abundance of color. The reds are not just red, they are crimson and scarlet and ruby, and the deep dark shade of wine held up to sunlight, each shade distinct and beautiful. The oranges glow like small suns, their skins taut and smooth, catching the firelight and seeming to hold it. The heirloom varieties are a riot of unexpected hues, streaks of green that fade into gold, shoulders of deep purple that bleed into pink, strange mottled patterns that look almost like watercolor paintings where colors have run together in unexpected ways. Some tomatoes are striped, with bands of color running from top to bottom. Others are solid, but have darker patches where they rested against other fruit on the vine or where a leaf created shade. Each tomato is different. Each one is perfect in its own way, a unique expression of the same genetic instructions shaped by sun and soil and the particular spot where it grew. Some are small, no bigger than your thumb, clustered together in tight bunches like grapes. Others are enormous, weighing heavy in your hand when you lift them, their surfaces stretched tight over the flesh within, so full of juice and pulp that the liquid moves inside when you shift them gently from hand to hand. You reach out and pick one up, cradling it in your palm. It is heavy, heavier than you expected. The slight give of the flesh beneath the skin, the way it yields just a little when you press your thumb gently against it, leaving a small indentation that slowly fills back in. This is a perfectly ripe tomato at the exact peak of readiness, when the sugars are at their highest and the acidity is balanced and the texture is neither too firm nor too soft. The tomato is still warm from the afternoon sun, even though it has been hours since you brought them in from the garden. It holds heat the way stone does, storing it up and releasing it slowly into the air around it. You lift it to your nose and inhale deeply. The scent is immediate and overwhelming in the best possible way. It smells green and bright and alive, with top notes that are almost citrus-like in their sharpness, mid notes that are sweet and floral, and base notes that are earthy and rich. It smells like the vines they came from, like the soil they grew in, like the rain that watered them, and the sun that ripened them over long weeks of summer. It is the smell of summer distilled into a single piece of fruit, and it makes something in your chest loosen and soften, makes you feel grateful for this abundance, for this harvest, for this farm and this life. You set the tomato down gently, placing it back with the others. Your gaze drifts to the rest of the kitchen, taking in all the preparations you have made. The mason jars are already waiting for you, lined up in neat rows on the far end of the counter, like soldiers standing at attention. They are empty now, their glass surfaces clean and clear and spotless, catching the firelight and throwing it back in soft, wavering reflections that dance on the stone walls. The jars are all different sizes, collected over years, some inherited from family members, others purchased at the general store in Little Briar, still others found at estate sales and farmhouse auctions. Some are quart jars, tall and cylindrical, perfect for whole tomatoes or large chunks that will be added to soups and stews throughout the winter. Others are pint jars, smaller and squatter, ideal for sauces or concentrated, preserves that will be used in smaller amounts. A few are half-pint jars, tiny things that you use for special preserves or for gifts to neighbors and friends. Each one has a two-part lid, a flat metal disc with a rubber gasket on the underside that will seal against the rim of the jar, and a threaded metal band that will hold the disc in place during processing. The lids sit in a shallow pot of water on the back of the wood stove, heating gently so that the rubber seals will soften and become pliable, ready to form a perfect bond when the time comes. Steam rises from the pot in soft curling wisps that dissolve into the warm air of the kitchen. The large stock pot is already on the stove as well, taking up most of one burner, filled halfway with water that is beginning to steam. This is the canner, the vessel that will hold the filled jars and process them in a hot water bath, creating the vacuum seal that will keep the tomatoes safe and fresh for months to come, protected from bacteria and mold and all the forces of decay that want to reclaim organic matter. The water inside is not yet boiling, but the first tiny bubbles form on the bottom of the pot, rising slowly to the surface like small silver pearls and releasing their heat into the air. The steam smells clean and pure, carrying with it the faint mineral scent of the well water that feeds the farmhouse, water that comes from deep underground, filtered through layers of rock and sand, cold and clear, and tasting faintly of the earth itself. Beside the stove, you have set out all the tools you will need, arranging them in the order you will use them, everything in its place and ready to hand. There is a large wooden cutting board, its surface cross-hatched with the marks of 1,000 meals, pale and worn but still solid and reliable, made from a single piece of maple that has stood up to decades of use. A sharp knife with a worn wooden handle, its blade honed to a fine edge that will slice through tomato flesh like butter, the steel gleaming dully in the firelight. The handle is smooth from years of use, shaped by the hands that have held it, including your own, and it fits perfectly into your palm. A slotted spoon for blanching and peeling, its handle smooth from years of use, the metal slots allowing water to drain away while keeping the tomatoes secure. A wide mouth funnel for filling the jars without spilling, made of sturdy metal that has developed a soft patina over time, changing from bright and shiny to something more muted and mellow. A ladle for transferring the hot tomatoes, its bowl deep and generous, able to hold a significant amount with each dip. A clean kitchen towel for wiping the rims of the jars, made of rough linen that has been washed so many times it feels almost like silk, soft and absorbent. A jar lifter with rubberized grips for removing the hot jars from the boiling water without burning your hands, an essential tool that makes the work so much safer and easier. Everything is ready, everything is waiting, everything is in its place, arranged with the kind of care that comes from experience, from having done this work many times before and knowing exactly what will be needed and when. You turn to look at the window above the sink. The rain is still falling, streaming down the glass in slow, irregular rivulets that catch the light from the kitchen and glow like liquid amber, like honey, like something precious. Beyond the glass, the evening is dark and soft, the kind of darkness that comes when the clouds are low and heavy and the world has turned inward, away from the bright exposure of day and into the protective cocoon of night. The garden is out there somewhere, the empty tomato vines rustling in the rain, the earth soft and saturated, the whole landscape settling into the quiet stillness of autumn, preparing for the sleep of winter that will come soon enough. The rain sounds louder near the window, a gentle pattering that rises and falls in waves as the wind shifts, sometimes intensifying into something more insistent, sometimes falling away to barely a whisper. You find yourself listening to it, letting it fill the spaces between your thoughts, letting it become a kind of meditation, a focus point for your attention. The window itself is old, the glass slightly wavy and imperfect, not the perfectly flat glass of modern manufacture, but something older, something made by hand, poured and cooled and set into the frame decades ago. The imperfections in the glass distort the view beyond into soft, abstract shapes, turning the darkness and the rain into something painterly, something that might have been created by an impressionist artist with a love of grey and silver. Droplets cling to the outside of the glass, each one a tiny lens that refracts the kitchen light into miniature rainbows. If you look at them from just the right angle, small spectrums of color that appear and disappear as you shift your position. You watch one droplet grow heavier and heavier, swelling as more water joins it, merging with other droplets that have gathered nearby, until finally it can no longer hold on to the glass. It streaks down, leaving a clear trail behind it, like a comet's tail, moving in a wandering path that follows the imperfections in the glass. Another droplet immediately takes its place at the top of the trail, and the process begins again. It is mesmerizing, this slow dance of water and gravity, and you let yourself watch it for a long moment, your mind quiet and still, not thinking about anything in particular, just observing. You take a moment to simply stand there, your hands resting on the counter, your body soaking in the warmth of the kitchen like a sponge soaking up water. Your breathing finds its own rhythm. Your ears fill with rain and fire and the slow, steady breathing of Miller on the rug. The smell of tomatoes surrounds you, bright and green and alive, mixing with the wood smoke from the stove and the faint scent of the stone walls themselves, which carry their own smell, something ancient and mineral and permanent. The glow of the wood stove wraps you in light, turning everything golden and soft, creating shadows that shift and dance as the flames flicker. The farmhouse holds you in its ancient, patient embrace, the stone walls thick and solid enough to withstand any storm, the timber beams strong and true overhead, the slate roof above your head shedding the rain the way it has shed rain for generations, channeling the water away from the walls and into the gutters and down to the ground. There is no hurry. There is no clock ticking down. There is only this moment, this kitchen, this work that will unfold slowly and gently, step by step, in the way that all good work should unfold, without rush or stress, or the feeling of being pressed by time. You are home, you are warm, you are safe. You begin by filling the deep farmhouse sink with cool water, turning the tap and watching as the stream splashes against the white porcelain, sending up a fine mist that catches the light and creates tiny momentary rainbows in the air. The faucet is old-fashioned, with separate hot and cold taps, ceramic handles that have been turned thousands of times, worn smooth by countless hands. The water is cold, drawn from the well deep beneath the farm, from an aquifer that has been there for thousands of years, filtered through layers of limestone and sand. It smells faintly of minerals and stone and the earth itself, a clean smell that has nothing of chlorine or treatment in it, just pure cold water from deep underground. The sink fills slowly, the water rising in gentle increments. You reach for the first basket of tomatoes and bring it closer, sliding it across the butcher block counter. The basket is made of woven willow, its handle worn smooth from years of carrying harvests from garden to kitchen, from orchard to barn, its structure still strong despite its age. The willow strips interlaced in a pattern that has been used for centuries. The basket is heavy with the weight of the fruit inside. You feel the strain in your arms as you lift it, the way the handle presses into your palms. Inside, the tomatoes are still dusty from the garden, their skins bearing the faint residue of soil and the dried remnants of yesterday's rain, small flecks of earth that cling to the curves and creases of the fruit. You lift the first tomato from the basket, cradling it in both hands, and you lower it into the cool water. It breaks the surface with a soft plop, a gentle sound that is somehow satisfying. Ripples spread outward in perfect concentric circles, waves that lap against the sides of the sink before bouncing back and interfering with themselves, creating complex patterns on the surface of the water. You add another tomato and another, establishing a rhythm. Each one creates its own ripples that merge with the ripples from the previous tomato, the water moving and shifting in response to each addition. The tomatoes bob gently in the water, buoyant, floating like small red and orange boats, their colors muted and softened by the liquid but still beautiful, still glowing with that internal light that ripe tomatoes have. The water turns slightly cloudy as the dust loosens and drifts away, particles of soil suspended in the liquid, slowly settling toward the bottom of the sink in a fine sediment. You reach into the water and take the first tomato in your hands. The cool slickness of its skin, smooth and firm beneath your fingertips, the weight of it in your palm like a small stone. You hold it under the surface and run your thumbs over it, gently rubbing away the last traces of dirt. The smoothness of the skin emerges as you work. The texture changes from slightly gritty to perfectly smooth. The water makes your hands cold. The chill seeps into your fingers, spreading up through your hands toward your wrists. But it is not unpleasant. It is refreshing, grounding, real. It is the feeling of physical work being done with care, the feeling of your hands being useful, of doing something meaningful and productive. The tomato is firm but not hard, ripe but not overripe. It feels perfect in your hands, like something that was grown with intention and care, like something that received exactly the right amount of sun and water and attention. The slight give of the flesh beneath the skin, the way it yields just a tiny bit under pressure, but springs back when you release. This is the texture you are looking for, the perfect balance between firm and soft that indicates a tomato at its absolute peak. You set it aside on the clean towel you have spread on the counter beside the sink, and you reach for the next one. The process is slow and rhythmic. Take a tomato, lower it into the water, rub it gently until it is clean, set it aside, take, lower, rub, set aside, take, lower, rub, set aside. The repetition is soothing, a simple pattern that requires no thought, only the quiet attention of your hands, only the focus that comes from doing one thing at a time, from being present with each tomato, with each moment. Each tomato receives the same care, the same gentle handling, the same patient cleaning. You are not rushing. You are not trying to get through the work as quickly as possible. You are simply doing the work, allowing it to take as long as it takes, allowing the rhythm to settle into your bones. Some tomatoes have more dirt clinging to them, dried mud that requires a bit more rubbing to remove, a bit more attention, a bit more patience. These are the ones that grew close to the ground, that rested on the soil rather than hanging free from the vine, and they carry more evidence of their origin. Others are nearly clean already, having hung high on the plant, where the rain washed them clean, needing only a quick rinse to remove the last traces of dust. You work through them one by one, your hands moving. In the cold water, your fingers growing numb but still capable, still steady, still able to feel the texture of the tomato skin, the firmness of the flesh. The water grows colder as you work, and your fingers begin to tingle with the chill, a sensation that is not quite painful, but definitely noticeable, a reminder that you are alive, that you have a body, that you are doing physical work in the physical world. But it is not unpleasant, it is grounding, it is real. The texture of each tomato beneath your touch. Some skins are perfectly smooth, while others have a slight roughness, a faint fuzz that disappears under your rubbing fingers. The slight variations in firmness, the way some tomatoes are dense and solid, their flesh tightly packed, while others have a tiny bit more give, indicating they are at the absolute peak of ripeness, the moment before they would begin to soften and become too ripe. The rain continues to fall outside. You hear it more clearly now that you are standing at the sink, right beneath the window, the sound of it hitting the glass just inches from your face. It is a steady, patient sound, a reminder that the world outside is soft and grey and restful, that there is no urgency, no pressure, no need to move faster than this gentle pace. The rain is not in a hurry. The rain falls at its own pace, taking as long as it needs to soak into the earth, to water the roots of the plants, to fill the streams and the ponds and the lake. The sound of the rain mixes with the sound of the water in the sink, the splashing of your hands, the gentle plop of tomatoes being added, the two blending together into a kind of music that has no melody, only texture and rhythm, and the sense of water moving, always flowing. When the first batch of tomatoes is clean, you drain the sink, pulling the plug and watching as the water swirls down the drain in a spiral, carrying with it the dust and sediment from the garden, the physical evidence of where these tomatoes came from, returning it to the earth through the pipes that lead to the septic field where it will soak back into the ground. The tomatoes are left behind in the sink, glistening and clean, their colours bright and true now that the dirt has been washed away, each one shining with a film of water that clings to the skin and catches the light. You refill the sink with fresh, cold water, the stream splashing against the white porcelain once again, and you repeat the process with the next basket of tomatoes. The work is meditative, simple, exactly what your hands need after a long day of other tasks, of moving through the world, of thinking and planning and doing. This work requires no thinking. This work requires only presence, only attention. only the willingness to stay with each moment, each tomato, each motion of your hands. Your mind goes quiet, the thoughts that have been chattering in the background all day beginning to slow and fade, replaced by a kind of peaceful emptiness, a spaciousness that allows you to simply be here, simply be present, simply exist in this moment without needing it to be different from what it is. You work through basket after basket, washing each tomato with the same care and attention, never rushing, never skipping steps, never treating any single tomato as less important than the others. Your hands grow accustomed to the cold water, and the initial shock of the chill fades into a steady, manageable sensation that becomes part of the background, part of the texture of the work. You notice small details about each tomato, a tiny scar where a bird pecked at it weeks ago, a slight dimple where it rested against another fruit on the vine, a patch of slightly thicker skin where it was shaded by a leaf for most of its growing life. Each tomato tells a story of how it grew, and you read these stories with your fingers as you wash them clean, learning about the life of each fruit, about the conditions it experienced, about the particular place it occupied on the plant. Once all the tomatoes are washed, you drain the sink one final time, watching the water spiral away, and you arrange the clean tomatoes on the counter in groups according to size and type, creating a visual organization that will make the next steps easier. The large beefsteak tomatoes go in one area, perfect for canning whole or in large chunks that will hold their shape well. The medium-sized round tomatoes go in another spot, ideal for sauces that need to cook down into something thick and rich. The small cherry and grape tomatoes go in a separate basket, which you decide you will save for roasting later in the week, tossed with olive oil and herbs, and cooked until their skins split and their sugars caramelize. The heirloom varieties you keep separate as well, their unusual shapes and colors making them special, deserving of their own jars, where their beauty can be appreciated even after they are preserved. Now you move to the next step. You fill the large stock pot on the stove with more water, adding enough to cover the tomatoes completely when you add them, making sure there will be plenty of water because you will be working in batches, processing multiple rounds of tomatoes through the boiling water. You turn up the heat beneath the pot, adjusting the flame until it is burning strong and blue. The water begins to warm. The surface goes from still and mirror-like to shimmering as the heat rises through the liquid. Small bubbles form on the sides and bottom of the pot, clinging to the metal before releasing and drifting upward, tiny spheres of air that catch the light as they rise. The bubbles are tiny at first, no bigger than pinheads, barely visible, but as the water continues to heat, they grow larger, more numerous, more vigorous. The steam begins to thicken, curling up in soft white tendrils that rise toward the ceiling and disappear into the warm air of the kitchen, adding to the humidity, making the air feel thicker, heavier, more present. The steam carries heat with it. The air around the stove becomes warmer, the heat radiating outward, mixing with the heat from the wood stove to make the kitchen feel like a cocoon, like a warm, safe space separated from the cool, wet world outside. While the water heats, you prepare the ice bath. You take a large ceramic bowl, one of the old mixing bowls that has been in this farmhouse for longer than you have been alive, its surface crazed with age, covered in a network of fine cracks that speak of years of use, of temperature changes, of countless batches of dough and batter, and now this, an ice bath for blanching tomatoes. The bowl is heavy, made of thick ceramic that holds temperature well, which is exactly what you need. You fill it with cold water from the tap, letting the water rise until the bowl is 3/4 full, the water pooling at the bottom and then rising up the curved sides. Then you add ice from the small ice box in the corner, scooping it out with your hands and dropping it into the water. The ice cracks and shifts as it hits the water, sending up a sharp, clean sound that contrasts with the soft patter of the rain, a sound that speaks of coldness and solidity, of water in its frozen form. The ice floats on the surface, bobbing gently. Condensation begins to form on the outside of the bowl as the cold meets the warm, humid air of the kitchen. Tiny droplets of water appearing on the ceramic surface and running down the sides in thin trails. The bowl grows heavy as you fill it, the weight of water and ice combined, and you set it carefully on the counter beside the stove, positioning it close enough that you can easily transfer tomatoes from the boiling water to the ice bath, but not so close that the heat from the stove will melt the ice too quickly. The water in the stock pot is boiling now, rolling in great, vigorous waves that send steam pouring into the air in thick, roiling clouds. The surface churns and roils, the bubbles breaking and reforming in a constant, energetic dance, the water moving with violence and heat and energy. The heat of it reaches you even from a foot away, a warm, moist presence that makes your cheeks flush and your skin damp, that makes you aware of the moisture in the air, the way it clings to every surface, the way it changes the quality of the light, making everything slightly hazy, slightly soft. The steam rises in thick clouds, filling the upper part of the kitchen. It settles on every surface, on the windows which are now completely fogged over, on the counters which have developed a fine sheen of moisture, on your face and hands which feel slightly tacky, slightly damp. You reach for the first tomato, holding it carefully by the stem end, gripping it firmly, but not so firmly that you damage the delicate flesh. You lower it into the boiling water. The moment the tomato touches the water, the boiling intensifies around it, the water reacting to the introduction of something cooler. The tomato sinks beneath the surface, disappearing into the churning heat, submerged completely in water that is 212 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to denature proteins, hot enough to break down the pectin that holds the skin to the flesh. You count slowly in your head, marking time without looking at a clock, using the internal rhythm that comes from having done this work before, from knowing how long is long enough. 10 seconds, 15, 20. The skin of the tomato begins to split, tiny cracks appearing along the surface, radiating outward from the blossom end where the skin is thinnest, where it meets the small scar where the flower once attached. This is what you are waiting for. This is the sign that the skin is ready to slip free, that the heat has done its work, that the bond between skin and flesh has been loosened enough that peeling will be easy. The splits are small at first, barely visible, just tiny lines in the red surface, but they grow as the heat penetrates deeper, the skin pulling back from these initial cracks, creating larger openings. You lift the tomato out with the slotted spoon, the water streaming off it in rivulets, running through the slots in the spoon and falling back into the pot with a sound like rain. You transfer it immediately to the ice bath. The tomato hisses as it hits the cold water, an angry sound, steam rising from the point of contact as the extreme temperature change happens instantly, going from boiling to ice cold in the space of a second. The sudden temperature change causes the skin to contract and loosen even more, pulling away from the flesh, making it easy to peel. You add another tomato to the boiling water and another, working in small batches of 3 or 4 at a time so that each one gets the attention it needs, so that you can monitor each one and remove it at exactly the right moment. The process is rhythmic: boil, transfer, boil, transfer. The kitchen fills with even more steam, the air growing warmer and more humid with each batch. The moisture settles on your skin, on your hair which is beginning to curl at the temples from the humidity, on the walls of the farmhouse which have developed a fine sheen of dampness. You work steadily, moving from the boiling pot to the ice bath and back again, your movements becoming automatic, your hands knowing what to do without your mind having to direct them. Each tomato spends exactly the right amount of time in the boiling water, long enough for the skin to loosen, but not so long that the flesh begins to cook and soften, which would make it mushy and unpleasant. You watch each one carefully, looking for those telltale splits, and when you see them, you transfer the tomato immediately, not letting it stay in the boiling water even a few seconds longer than necessary. The ice bath grows crowded with tomatoes, their skins puckered and wrinkled, floating among the melting ice cubes, which are growing smaller with each batch, the cold water gradually warming from the addition of hot tomatoes. You add more ice periodically, maintaining the temperature of the bath, making sure it stays cold enough to do its job. When the ice bath is full of blanched tomatoes, you begin the work of peeling. You take the first tomato in your hands, lifting it from the cold water. Cool. The way it has gone from hot to cold in the span of a minute, the way the temperature has cycled through such extremes. The skin is loose now, puckered and wrinkled, like the skin of an old apple, and when you pinch it gently between your thumb and forefinger, it slides away from the flesh beneath with almost no resistance, coming free easily, willingly, as though it wants to be removed. You pull, and the skin peels back in a single satisfying strip, revealing the bright, glistening flesh underneath. The tomato is naked now, vulnerable and soft, its inner flesh exposed to the air, different in your hands, slippery and delicate and somehow more real. The flesh is smooth and cool, slightly slick with the juices that have been released. The seed suspended in the gel-like substance inside, visible through the translucent walls of the seed cavities, tiny yellow seeds floating in clear gel. You set the peeled tomato in a clean bowl and reach for the next one. The skins come away easily, some in large sheets that you can pull off in one smooth motion, starting at the top and peeling down to the bottom in a continuous strip, others in smaller pieces that require more delicate handling, that come away in sections rather than all at once. You collect the skins in a separate bowl, thinking that perhaps you will add them to the compost pile tomorrow, returning them to the soil that grew them, completing the circle, giving back to the earth what came from the earth. The skins are thin and delicate, almost translucent in places, and they pile up in the bowl like discarded silk scarves, glistening with moisture, still carrying some of the heat from the boiling water. The work is repetitive, but it is not boring. There is something deeply satisfying about the simplicity of it, the way each tomato transforms under your hands, the way the pile of peeled tomatoes grows steadily in the bowl, bright and naked and ready for the next step. Your fingers begin to ache slightly from the cold and the repetition, the joints stiffening from being in the cold water, from making the same motions over and over. You pause to flex them, shaking out the stiffness, rolling your wrists in slow circles to loosen the joints. The small bones in your fingers, the way they move against each other, the slight grinding of cartilage that comes with age and use. You roll your wrists, feeling the joints crack softly, a release of built-up gas in the joint spaces, and then you continue, returning to the work with refreshed hands. The fire crackles in the wood stove, a sharp pop that sends a small shower of sparks up against the grate, the sparks glowing, orange for a moment before fading to black. You glance over to see Miller, still sprawled on the rug, his eyes fully closed now, his breathing deep and even, his chest rising and falling in that slow rhythm that speaks of deep rest, of complete relaxation, of a dog who feels utterly safe. Fig has shifted slightly on the armchair, one orange paw stretching out into the air, his toes spreading wide, his claws extending and then retracting before tucking the paw back beneath him, settling back into his circular shape. You return to the peeling, working through the tomatoes one by one, establishing a meditative rhythm, your hands moving automatically, your mind quiet and still, thoughts drifting by like clouds, but not catching, not sticking, just passing through. You peel one tomato, then another, the bowl filling slowly, the pile growing, the work progressing at its own steady pace. You are not trying to go fast. You are not trying to finish quickly. You are simply doing the work, being present with it, allowing it to take as long as it takes. Your hands are stained red now from the juices that seep out as you peel, the tomato liquid dyeing your skin in shades of pink and red and orange, collecting under your fingernails, staining the creases in your palms. The smell in the kitchen has changed now, grown richer and more intense, more concentrated. The bright green scent of the raw tomatoes has been replaced by something warmer, something that smells like summer, captured and concentrated, distilled down to its essence. It is the smell of sweetness and acidity combined, of earth and sun and life at its ripest, of fruit at the absolute peak of flavor. The steam has made everything in the kitchen slightly damp, and the windows are completely fogged over now, the glass opaque with condensation, no longer transparent, no longer offering any view of the world outside. The kitchen has become its own small world, complete and self-contained, separated from everything beyond these walls. The only reminder that there is a world outside is the sound of the rain, still falling, still patient, still steady. You continue the blanching and peeling process, working through batch after batch of tomatoes, your movements steady and sure, your hands knowing what to do. The boiling water needs to be replenished occasionally as it evaporates and as you remove tomato after tomato, and you add more from the kettle that sits on the back of the stove, always kept full and warm, the water in it heated by the residual heat from the stove top. The ice in the ice bath melts and needs to be refreshed regularly, and you add more from the ice box, feeling the cold bite of it against your warm, damp hands, the sharp contrast of temperature, reminding you that you have nerve endings, that you can feel that you are alive and present in your body. The work takes time, but you are not watching the clock. You are simply moving through the process, one step at a time, one tomato at a time, allowing the work to unfold at its own pace. There is a satisfaction in this, in the steady progress, in the accumulation of peeled tomatoes in the bowl, in the physical evidence of work being done, of abundance being processed, of summer being preserved for the winter ahead. Now comes the coring and chopping. You move the bowl of peeled tomatoes to the cutting board, and you take the sharp knife in your hand. The familiar weight of it, the way the wooden handle fits perfectly into your palm, shaped by years of use, by countless hands that have held it before yours. You have used this knife for years, and it has become an extension of your hand, a tool that moves with confidence and precision, that responds to the slightest pressure, that knows what you want it to do before you fully form the intention. The blade is sharp enough that you barely need to apply pressure, letting the weight of the knife do most of the work, letting gravity pull the blade through the flesh. A sharp knife is safer than a dull one. Everyone knows this, because it cuts cleanly without slipping, because it goes where you direct it rather than skidding across the surface. This knife has been sharpened recently, honed on the whetstone that sits in the drawer, and it is at its absolute peak of sharpness. You take the first tomato and set it on the board, steadying it with your left hand, your fingers curled slightly, your knuckles forward, creating a stable platform while keeping your fingertips safely back from the blade. The flesh is soft and yielding. Juice begins to seep out where your fingers press against it. The give of the flesh, the way it compresses slightly under even gentle pressure. You position the knife at the top of the tomato, where the stem scar sits, where the vine once attached and fed this fruit with water and nutrients. You make a small angled cut, carving out the tough core in a neat circular motion, cutting around the stem scar and removing it, along with the tough white flesh that radiates from it into the fruit. The core comes away easily, a small cone of firm flesh and fibrous tissue that is too tough to be pleasant in the final product. You set it aside in the bowl with the skins to be composted later. Then you cut the tomato in half vertically from top to bottom. The blade slices through the flesh with a gentle resistance, smooth and easy. The tomato opens like a book to reveal its inner chambers. The interior is beautiful, geometrically organized in a way that speaks to the mathematical precision of nature, the way that growth follows patterns, follows rules, follows the instructions encoded in DNA. The seeds are suspended in gel in several chambers, the flesh arranged in perfect segments that radiate from the center, the walls between chambers thin and delicate. Different textures, the firm flesh of the outer walls, the jelly-like gel surrounding the seeds themselves with their hard outer coating. The interior is beautiful in its complexity, in its organization, in the way that something so simple as a tomato is actually composed of distinct parts, each with its own texture and purpose. You cut each half into quarters, and then you cut the quarters into smaller pieces, rough chunks that will break down as they cook, but that will still maintain some texture, still be recognizable as tomato pieces rather than pure puree. The pieces are not uniform. Some are larger, some are smaller, some are more regular in shape, while others are odd and angular, and that is exactly right. This is rustic canning, not fine dining. This is preservation of abundance, not creation of perfection. The irregularity is part of the charm, part of the authenticity, part of what makes home canned food different from store-bought. The cutting board is soon covered with tomato pieces. The juice pools around them, running in thin streams toward the edges of the board. The liquid bright red and viscous, carrying tiny particles of pulp and seeds. The juice is bright red, slightly viscous from the dissolved pectin. It smells intensely of tomatoes, concentrated and pure. The smell so strong that it almost has a taste that makes your mouth water in anticipation. You work carefully, methodically, moving from one tomato to the next, coring and halving and chopping, building a mound of red, glistening chunks that grows steadily as you work. The knife makes a soft thudding sound each time it meets the board, a rhythmic percussion that blends with the sound of the rain and the fire and the gentle hiss of the water boiling in the canner. Thud, thud, thud. The sound is steady, hypnotic. You fall into a rhythm with it, your movements becoming automatic, flowing one into the next without pause, without thought, your mind going quiet and still as your hands do their work. The tomatoes are different as you work through them. Some are firmer, their flesh dense and meaty, holding together well as you cut them, the knife moving through with a clean sound. Others are softer, almost melting under the knife, their flesh nearly liquid, the knife encountering very little resistance. These are the ones at the absolute peak of ripeness, perhaps even slightly past peak, and they release so much juice that the cutting board is soon swimming in red liquid. The heirloom varieties are especially irregular, their interiors complex and multi-chambered, with thick walls and small seed cavities, or sometimes the opposite, with thin walls and large gel-filled centers. Each variety is different, each one a unique expression of genetic heritage, of traits that have been preserved and passed down through generations of seed saving. The beefsteak tomatoes are enormous, requiring many cuts to reduce them to manageable pieces, each slice of the knife revealing more flesh, more chambers, more of the complex interior structure. The paste tomatoes are elongated and firm, with fewer seeds and more flesh, their interiors more solid and less juicy, perfect for making thick sauces that will cling to pasta. Your hands are slick with juice now, red liquid coating your fingers and palms, dripping from your wrists. You pause to wipe them on the kitchen towel, feeling the rough texture of the linen against your skin, the way it absorbs the moisture. The towel is already stained red in places, marked by the work you are doing, and you do not mind. These are the stains of a kitchen well used, a life well lived, evidence of abundance processed, of food preserved, of care taken. The towel will wash clean eventually, or if it does not, if the red stain remains even after washing, it will simply be a reminder of this evening, of this work, of this harvest that was so generous. Before you continue, you pause to taste. You pick up a small piece of tomato, one of the chunks that fell to the side of the board, and you bring it to your lips. The flesh is cool against your mouth, smooth and slick with juice. You bite down gently and the tomato bursts against your tongue, releasing a flood of flavor that is sweet and tart and bright all at once. The taste is pure summer, sunshine and warm soil, and the tang of acidity balanced perfectly with natural sugars. The flesh is soft, but still has some structure, some integrity, and you chew slowly, savoring it, letting the juice fill your mouth. Seeds catch between your teeth, and you work them free with your tongue. This is why you do this work. This is what you are preserving, this exact taste, this exact moment of perfection, sealed away in jars to be opened later, when the garden is silent and the world is cold. You swallow and the taste lingers, bright and alive, a reminder of what these jars will hold through the winter months ahead. When the chopping is done, when every tomato has been cored and cut and reduced to chunks, you transfer all the tomato pieces to a large bowl, using your hands to scoop them up, feeling the cool, slick flesh sliding through your fingers, feeling the juice running down your arms. You carry the bowl over to the stove, moving carefully so as not to spill, and you set it down on the counter beside the waiting jars. The jars are still waiting, lined up and ready, their glass surfaces glinting in the firelight, like a row of empty vessels waiting to be filled, waiting to become useful, waiting to fulfill their purpose. You take the first jar and hold it up to the light, inspecting it carefully for any cracks or chips that might prevent it from sealing properly. The glass is smooth and perfect. You run your finger around the rim, feeling for any roughness or imperfection that might prevent a proper seal, any small nick or chip that would allow air to enter and spoil the contents. The rim is smooth, flawless, without any defect that you can feel. You set the jar on the counter, satisfied that it is ready to be filled. You pick up the wide-mouth funnel and place it in the top of the jar, the metal rim resting securely against the glass, creating a guide that will keep the tomatoes from spilling. The funnel will guide the tomatoes into the jar without mess, keeping the rim clean and the process tidy, preventing waste and making the work easier. The funnel is cool to the touch. The slight roughness of the metal, the small scratches and dents that have accumulated over years of use, each one a mark of work done, of harvest preserved. You take the ladle and dip it into the bowl of chopped tomatoes, pushing it down through the chunks and the juice until it reaches the bottom, then lifting it slowly, letting the excess juice drain away for a moment before transferring it to the jar. The tomatoes are slippery and heavy, and they slide from the ladle into the funnel with a wet plopping sound, tumbling down into the jar and settling at the bottom with a splash that sends tiny droplets of juice up the inside of the glass. You add another ladleful and another, watching as the jar fills slowly, the red chunks packing together, settling into the spaces, the juice filling the gaps between them like mortar between bricks. The process is slow and deliberate. You are not rushing. You are simply filling the jar, one ladle at a time, letting the work unfold at its own pace, letting each ladleful settle before adding the next. The tomatoes are still warm from the blanching, and the heat radiates through the glass jar, warming your hands as you hold it, the glass becoming warm to the touch. You use a clean wooden chopstick to gently press down on the tomatoes, releasing any air bubbles that might be trapped between the pieces, sliding the chopstick down the inside of the jar, moving it around the perimeter, working it through the chunks. The resistance of the tomatoes, the way they shift and settle as you press, the way the pieces move and reorient themselves, packing more tightly. A few bubbles rise to the surface, small globes of air that pop and disappear when they reach the top, releasing their air into the room. You continue pressing and sliding until you are satisfied that most of the air has been released, that the contents are packed as tightly as they can be while still allowing liquid to flow between them. Air bubbles can interfere with the sealing process, can create pockets where bacteria might survive, so this step is important. You take your time with it, being thorough, making sure you work the chopstick through the entire jar, not just the edges. When you are satisfied, you add a bit more tomato to fill the space that was created by the settling, ladling in more chunks and juice until the jar is properly full. When the jar is full to within half an inch of the rim, you stop. This space, this head space, is critical to proper sealing. It allows the contents to expand as they heat without pushing past the seal, allows room for the vacuum to form as the jar cools, creates the conditions necessary for long-term preservation. Too much headspace and the jar might not seal properly. The vacuum might not form strongly enough. Too little, and the contents might push past the seal during processing, preventing proper sealing, allowing bacteria to enter. Half an inch is exactly right, the standard measurement that has been tested and proven over decades of home canning. You lift the funnel away and set it aside. Take a clean, damp cloth and wipe the rim of the jar carefully, removing any stray bits of tomato or juice that might have splashed up during filling. The rim must be perfectly clean for the lid to seal properly. Even the smallest particle of food or the thinnest film of juice can prevent the rubber gasket from forming a perfect seal against the glass, can allow air to seep in, can cause the entire jar to fail. You run the cloth around the rim carefully, checking for any residue, any seeds, any juice that might have escaped your notice. You reach for one of the lids, lifting it from the pot of hot water with a pair of tongs, gripping it carefully. The metal is hot and steam rises from it as you hold it in the air for a moment, the water dripping from the edges and falling back into the pot with tiny splashes. The rubber seal on the underside of the lid is soft and pliable from the heat, ready to form a perfect bond with the glass rim, the heat having made it more flexible, more able to conform to any slight irregularities in the glass. You place the lid carefully on top of the jar, centering it so that the rubber seal sits flat against the rim, making sure it is positioned properly before you secure it. The lid settles into place with a soft metallic sound, metal meeting glass. Then you take one of the metal bands and screw it on, tightening it with your fingers until it is snug but not overly tight, turning it until you meet resistance and then stopping. The band should hold the lid in place without forcing it, allowing air to escape during the processing, but keeping the lid from moving. If you tighten it too much, the air cannot escape and the jar will not seal properly. If you do not tighten it enough, the lid might shift during processing. The correct tension is something you have learned through experience, a feeling in your fingers that tells you when it is just right, a subtle knowledge that comes from having done this many times. You set the filled jar aside and reach for the next one. The process repeats: inspect, funnel, ladle, fill, release air bubbles, wipe, lid, band, inspect, funnel, ladle, fill, release air bubbles, wipe, lid, band. The rhythm is soothing, deeply soothing, a pattern that requires just enough attention to keep your mind occupied, but not so much that you feel strained or stressed. Your hands move with confidence, guided by muscle memory and the quiet knowledge that you have done this before many times in this very kitchen or in other kitchens, guided by mothers and grandmothers and the accumulated wisdom of generations. Each jar receives the same care, the same attention, the same patient filling. You are not rushing through any of them, not treating any single jar as less important than the others. Each one represents food for the winter, nourishment for the months ahead, the gift of summer preserved for darker days. The jars begin to line up on the counter, each one filled with the bright red chunks of tomato, each one sealed and ready for the canner. The sight of them is satisfying in a deep, primal way. This is abundance. This is security. This is the work of putting food by, of preparing for the seasons ahead, of making sure that even when the garden is buried under snow and the ground is frozen solid, you will have the taste of summer waiting for you in the pantry, ready to be opened and enjoyed. The jars glow in the firelight, their contents vivid and alive, red as garnets, red as wine, red as blood itself, the color of life and growth, and the sun's energy captured and stored. You feel a swell of satisfaction in your chest, a quiet pride in the work of your hands, in your ability to take the raw materials that nature provides and transform them into something that will last, something that will sustain you, something that connects you to the rhythms of the natural world and to the generations of humans who have done this same work, who have stood in kitchens and preserved food and prepared for winter since humans first learned to control fire and make containers that could hold liquid. The rain continues to fall, the fire continues to crackle, the kitchen remains warm and golden and safe. You move through the work with a kind of meditative focus, your thoughts quiet, your body relaxed, your hands busy with the simple, repetitive tasks. There is no sense of time passing in the usual way. Clock time has been replaced by task time, marked not by minutes, but by jars filled, by batches processed, by the steady accumulation of preserved food. The steam continues to rise from the canner, and the moisture in the air makes everything feel soft and close, as though the kitchen has become its own small climate, its own ecosystem, separate from the world beyond these walls. The windows are completely opaque now, offering no view of the outside. You feel as though you are in a bubble, a protected space where the only things that matter are the work at hand and the warmth and the quiet presence of the animals nearby. When the bowl is empty and 7 jars are full, you turn your attention to the canner. The water inside is boiling vigorously now, rolling in great waves that send steam pouring up toward the ceiling in thick white clouds that spread and dissipate in the warm air. You have placed a metal rack at the bottom of the pot, a circular platform with handles that will keep the jars from sitting directly on the hot metal and cracking from the thermal shock, from the extreme temperature differential between the hot metal and the cooler glass. The rack has handles that fold up, allowing you to lift multiple jars at once when they are finished processing, making it easier to remove them without having to use the jar lifter for each individual jar. You lift the first jar carefully, holding it by the band with a kitchen towel to protect your hand from the heat. You lower it into the canner, into the boiling water. The jar sinks beneath the surface, disappearing into the roiling water. A small thrill of satisfaction, the pleasure of seeing work progress, of moving through the steps of a familiar process. 1 down, 6 more to go in this batch, many more batches ahead. The water level rises slightly as you add the jar, displaced by the volume of the jar itself. Bubbles form on the surface of the glass, rising in streams as the heat penetrates the glass and begins to warm the contents. You add the jars one by one, arranging them carefully so that they do not touch each other, so that the water can circulate freely around them, so that each jar will receive even heating, even processing. The jars should not touch because if they do, they might knock against each other as the water boils, and the impact could crack the glass or prevent proper sealing. The canner holds 7 jars. When it is full, when all 7 jars are submerged and arranged in a circle with space between them, you step back and watch the water return to a boil around them. The addition of the cooler jars has temporarily stopped the boiling, the mass of cool glass and cool tomatoes absorbing heat from the water. You watch as the bubbles begin to form again on the bottom of the pot, slowly at first, and then more vigorously as the water returns to temperature. The jars are submerged completely, covered by at least an inch of water. You check to make sure they are fully covered because the processing times are calculated based on the jars being completely submerged. If the water level drops during processing and exposes the tops of the jars, the processing will not be adequate and the food might not be safe. They will process here for the next 45 minutes, the heat driving out the air from inside the jars, creating the vacuum that will pull the lids down tight against the rims, forming the seal that will keep the contents safe from bacteria and mold and all the forces of decay that want to reclaim organic matter and return it to the earth. The boiling water bath method is reliable and time-tested, used by home canners for over a century, proven safe by decades of use and by scientific testing. The heat kills any bacteria that might be present, and the sealed jars prevent new bacteria from entering. The acidity of the tomatoes provides additional protection, making them safe to process in a water bath rather than requiring the higher temperatures of a pressure canner. You trust this process completely have used it many times before without any failures. You set the timer, the old mechanical kind that ticks softly as it counts down, its face marked with numbers and its hand moving slowly around the dial. You turn your attention to the next batch. There are still more tomatoes to chop, more jars to fill, more work to do. But the work is not a burden. The work is a gift. The work is a way of being present, of using your hands, of creating something that will nourish you in the months to come, of participating in the ancient rhythms of harvest and preservation that connect you to humans across all of history. You return to the cutting board and begin again. Core, halve, chop. Core, halve, chop. The knife moves through the tomatoes with ease, and the pile of chunks grows once more. The juice runs in rivulets across the board, pooling at the edges, bright and red and rich. You use the side of the knife to scrape it all into the bowl, not wanting to waste a single drop. The juice is precious, full of flavor and nutrients and the concentrated essence of tomato, and it will become part of the liquid that surrounds the tomato chunks in the jars, adding flavor and filling the spaces between pieces. The second batch of jars fills just as slowly and deliberately as the first. Inspect, funnel, ladle, fill, release air bubbles, wipe, lid, band. The repetition is calming, deeply calming, a kind of meditation that empties your mind of everything except the task at hand. You are not thinking about tomorrow, not thinking about yesterday, not thinking about anything that happened during the day or anything that might happen in the future. You are simply here in this kitchen with these tomatoes, doing this work, present in this moment and this moment only. Each jar is a small accomplishment. The accumulation of these small accomplishments becomes something larger, something meaningful. The work is not dramatic or exciting, but it is satisfying in a deep way, satisfying in the way that good work always is, work done with care and attention and respect for the materials you are working with. When the timer rings, a soft mechanical trill that cuts through the sound of rain and fire, you turn it off and approach the canner, moving carefully because the steam rising from the pot is hot enough to burn. The water is still boiling. The jars are barely visible through the steam and the churning water, shapes moving beneath the surface. You turn off the heat beneath the canner and let it sit for a few minutes, allowing the boiling to subside slightly, allowing the water to calm. This makes it safer to remove the jars, reduces the risk of them cracking from too rapid temperature change, gives the glass a moment to adjust before being exposed to the cooler air of the kitchen. When the water has calmed from a rolling boil to a gentle simmer, when the violence of the boiling has been replaced by a gentler movement, you use the jar lifter to remove the jars one by one. The lifter grips the jars securely below the band, the rubberized pads creating friction against the hot glass. You lift each one carefully from the boiling water, moving slowly to avoid splashing to avoid burns. The jars are hot, almost too hot to be near. radiating heat like small stoves. Steam rises from them in thick clouds as you lift them free, water streaming off the glass and running back into the canner with sounds like rain on pavement. Water streams off the jars, running down the sides and dripping from the bottom, falling back into the canner with a continuous patter. You hold each jar steady as you transfer it to the folded towel you have spread on the counter, a thick cotton towel that will protect the counter from the heat and will allow air to circulate around the jars. You space the jars apart, leaving several inches between them so that air can circulate freely, helping them cool evenly, preventing any one jar from cooling faster than the others. The jars make a sound as they cool, and you wait for it, listening for it, anticipating it with pleasure. And then it comes, a sharp metallic ping that echoes in the quiet kitchen, clear as a bell, unmistakable. This is the sound of the lid sealing, the sound of the vacuum forming, the sound of success. As the contents cool and contract, they pull the lid down tightly against the rim and the metal disc flexes slightly, creating that distinctive ping, that sound that every home canner knows and loves. Each ping is a small victory, a confirmation that the work has been done properly, that the seal has formed, that the food is safely preserved. You count them silently as they seal, your heart lifting slightly with each one. Ping, a pause, ping, another pause, ping, ping, two together, ping, another. The sounds come at irregular intervals as each jar cools at its own pace, as each lid reaches the critical point where the vacuum is strong enough to pull it down. 7 jars, 7 seals, perfect. Not a single failure, not a single jar that refuses to seal. This is what you hope for, what you work for. The satisfaction of it fills your chest with warmth, with pleasure, with the deep contentment that comes from work done well. You lower the second batch of jars into the canner, repeating the process. You set the timer once more. The process continues, batch after batch, the rhythm unchanging, the steps always the same. Fill jars, process jars, remove jars, listen for the ping. The kitchen grows warmer and more humid with each batch. Your hair clings damply to your forehead, curling at the temples from the humidity. Your clothes feel slightly damp, sticking to your skin, but you do not mind. This is the work. The warmth is part of it. The moisture is part of it. The effort is part of it. This is what preservation requires, time and heat and attention and care. You work through the third batch, then the fourth, the pile of tomatoes on the counter, slowly diminishing as you work through them, the pile of filled, sealed jars, growing with each completed batch. You lose track of time, measuring it only by the ring of the timer and the ping of sealing lids by batches completed and jars filled. The rain continues its steady percussion against the windows, softer now, lighter, as though the storm is beginning to exhaust itself, to wind down after hours of steady falling. The fire burns low and you add more wood, opening the door and placing 2 more logs carefully on the coals, watching as they catch and begin to burn, the flames licking up around them. The kitchen has become a workshop, a place of transformation where raw ingredients become preserved abundance, where the gifts of summer are sealed away for winter use. The counters are covered with jars now, rows and rows of them, each one glowing red in the firelight like a gem, like a treasure, each one sealed and safe and ready. You count them silently as you work, keeping a mental tally. 20 jars, 25, 30. The number grows with each batch. That quiet satisfaction builds in your chest, that sense of accomplishment that comes from productive work, from taking action, from caring for your future self. You continue filling jars, your movements automatic now, your hands knowing exactly what to do without your mind having to direct them. Ladle, fill, chopstick, wipe, lid, band. The motions are as natural as breathing now, as walking, as any action that has been repeated enough times to become unconscious, to become part of your physical vocabulary. Each jar is a small accomplishment, each batch a larger one. The accumulation of all these small actions becomes something significant, something meaningful, something that will matter when winter comes and you are hungry for the taste of summer. The final batch of tomatoes is chopped and ready to be jarred. You work through them steadily, filling the last jars with the same care you gave to the first, not allowing fatigue or boredom to make you careless or rushed. The last tomato chunks are just as important as the first. The last jar matters just as much. You fill each one properly, completely, attending to every detail. When the bowl is finally empty, when the last tomato chunk has been ladled into the last jar, when the last rim has been wiped, and the last lid placed and the last band screwed on, you feel a deep sense of completion, a satisfaction that runs through your entire body. You step back from the counter and look at the filled jars waiting to go into the canner for their final batch. Pleased, deeply pleased with what you have accomplished. The work is nearly done. The tomatoes are preserved. The abundance has been honored and protected. The last batch goes into the boiling water. You set the timer one final time, listening to it begin its quiet ticking, marking off the 45 minutes that will complete this work. While the final batch processes, you begin to clean up, returning the kitchen to order. You carry the cutting board to the sink and wash it carefully, scrubbing away the red stains and the sticky residue with hot water and soap, watching as the red water swirls down the drain. You wash the knife, feeling the sharpness of the blade as you clean it, respecting the tool that has served you so well tonight, being careful not to cut yourself as you run the cloth along the edge. You wash the bowls and the ladle and the funnel, each item receiving your attention and care, being returned to cleanliness, to readiness for the next use. The hot water feels good on your tired hands, soothing and cleansing, washing away the stickiness and the stains. The soap smells like lavender. You take a moment to appreciate the scent, to let it register in your mind, another layer of sensory experience in an evening already full of textures and smells and sounds. When the timer rings for the last time, its trill cutting through the quiet sounds of rain and fire, you remove the final batch of jars and set them on the counter to cool. The pinging begins almost immediately, one jar after another, signaling its successful seal. You smile at the sound, at this auditory confirmation of success. You count the jars one more time, touching each one lightly, feeling the warmth still radiating from the glass. 35 jars in total, 35 jars of summer preserved and waiting, 35 small victories, 35 gifts to your future self. The sight of them fills you with satisfaction, with pride, with the deep contentment that comes from work completed, from abundance preserved, from taking care of yourself and your home. You stand in the center of the kitchen, surrounded by your work. Let yourself simply be still for a moment, simply exist in this space, in this completion. The rain is still falling, softer now, barely more than a whisper, a gentle presence rather than the steady drumming it was earlier. The fire has burned down to glowing coals again, and the kitchen is beginning to cool slightly, the heat dissipating into the evening as the stove burns lower. The windows are beginning to clear as the humidity decreases. Faint streaks where condensation has run down the glass, leaving trails like tears. You have done something good tonight. You have taken the gifts of the earth and turned them into something that will sustain you through the winter months ahead. You have used your hands and your time and your care to create abundance, to ensure that nothing goes to waste, to honor the harvest and the growing season and the work of tending a garden. And now the work is done, and the rest of the evening stretches out before you like a soft, welcoming blanket, like an invitation to rest, like permission to be still. You move to the sink and wash your hands one final time. Cool water runs over your stained fingers, carrying away the last of the red juice and the stickiness that has accumulated over hours of work. The soap smells like lavender and rosemary, herbs from the garden that you dried and infused into oil last summer. The scent mingles with the lingering smell of tomatoes and wood smoke and damp stone, creating a complex fragrance that speaks of this place, this farm, this life. You scrub gently, working the lather between your fingers, under your nails where tomato seeds and juice have collected, across your palms where the creases are stained pink, up your wrists where juice has run down your arms. The soap is handmade, slightly rough with bits of dried herb embedded in it. It feels good against your skin, cleansing and refreshing. The water turns faintly pink as it swirls down the drain. When you rinse, your hands emerge clean and cool, tingling slightly from the work they have done, from the many hours of repetitive motion, of gripping and lifting and stirring. You dry your hands on the kitchen towel, patting them rather than rubbing, feeling the softness of the worn linen. Your hands feel tired. The muscles in your palms and fingers ache pleasantly from use. You glance at the rows of jars on the counter one more time. They are still cooling, the glass warm to the touch. If you were to place your hand on one, the contents settling inside, the liquid redistributing as everything finds its final configuration. The liquid level has dropped slightly in some jars as the contents contracted during cooling, which is perfectly normal, perfectly expected. Tomorrow, in the morning light, you will check the seals, pressing down on each lid to make sure it does not flex, does not give under pressure, confirming that each jar is properly sealed and safe. And then you will carry them down to the cellar, down the stone steps into the cool, dark space beneath the farmhouse where the temperature stays constant year-round, where the shelves are already lined with other jars from other harvests, green beans and pickles and jam, relish and chutney and applesauce, the accumulated abundance of a growing season, the results of many hours of work, just like tonight. The jars will stand in neat rows on the wooden shelves, organized by type and date, ready whenever you need them, waiting through the autumn and winter, through the months when the garden is frozen and bare, ready to provide color and flavor and the memory of summer warmth. But tonight they can rest here, glowing in the firelight, still radiating the heat of processing, still settling into their final form. They are a testament to the work of your hands, to your care and attention, to your willingness to spend an evening engaged in the patient, methodical work of preservation. They are beautiful, these jars, in their uniformity and their abundance, in the way they catch and reflect the light, in the vivid red of their contents. You turn away from the counter and move toward the hearth, toward the warmth and the comfort of the fire. The wood stove has burned down now, the flames replaced by a bed of glowing coals that radiate a steady, gentle heat, the kind of heat that soaks into your bones and stays there, warming you from the inside out. The firelight is softer than it was earlier in the evening, a deep orange glow that flickers and pulses, like a heartbeat, like something alive, like a living presence in the room. You open the door of the stove carefully, using the thick leather glove that hangs on a hook nearby, the leather worn smooth and supple from years of use, shaped to your hand. A wave of warmth washes over your face as you open the door, the heat intense but pleasant, carrying with it the smell of burning birch and the faint, sweet scent of wood smoke. You add 2 more logs, placing them gently on top of the coals, arranging them so they will catch easily, so the fire will burn steadily through the evening and into the night. The bark is rough and dry. It catches almost immediately, the flames licking up around the wood and beginning to consume it, the logs beginning their slow transformation from solid wood to ash and smoke and heat. The logs are birch, and they burn with a clean, bright flame that crackles and pops as the bark curls and the wood begins to char. You watch for a moment, mesmerized by the dance of the flames, by the way they move and shift and change, never the same from one moment to the next, always in motion, always consuming, always transforming. You close the door and adjust the damper, pulling it slightly to allow more air to flow, to feed the fire and help it establish itself, and then you will push it back in later to slow the burn, to make the logs last through the night. The stove responds immediately, the flames growing stronger and brighter, the increase in heat even through the closed door. You replace the glove on its hook and turn toward the armchair. The armchair near the hearth is calling to you, as it does every evening, the one with the deep velvet cushions and the wide supportive arms. It is your favorite spot in the farmhouse, the place where you sit at the end of every day, where you read or knit or simply sit and watch the fire, where you allow yourself to be still, to rest, to let go of the day's activities and sink into evening quiet. Tonight it looks especially inviting, the velvet cushions plump and soft, the burgundy colour rich in the firelight, the whole chair seeming to glow with welcome. You sink into it slowly, letting your body down carefully. Your tired muscles relax as they meet the support of the cushions. The cushions give beneath your weight, moulding themselves to your shape. You let yourself settle completely, your spine releasing into the support of the chair back, your arms resting on the broad armrests, your legs stretched out before you. The velvet is soft and slightly worn beneath your hands, warm from the heat of the fire. You run your palms over it, feeling the texture, feeling the slight variations where the nap has been compressed by years of use. The chair wraps around you like an embrace. You feel yourself beginning to let go, to release the last threads of the day's energy, to allow tiredness to settle over you like a blanket. Your body is pleasantly exhausted from the work, your muscles loose and warm, your mind quiet and still. You let your head rest against the back of the chair. Close your eyes for just a moment, just to rest them, just to appreciate the darkness behind your eyelids. Fig stirs on the back of the chair. He lifts his orange head and blinks his green eyes at you slowly, that slow blink that cats do when they are content, when they feel safe, when they are expressing affection without words. He stretches, his body elongating as he extends his front legs forward and his back legs back, his spine curving into a deep arch, his mouth opening in a silent yawn. He stands and pads down the back of the chair with careful steps, each foot placed with precision. He steps onto your shoulder, balancing there for a moment, his warm weight pressing against you. That distinctive cat smell, warm and slightly dusty, like sun-warm fur and clean linen. He pauses, considering, and then he curls into your lap, circling once, twice, 3 times, his body rotating as he searches for the perfect position. He settles finally, tucking his paws beneath his chest, wrapping his tail around his body, creating a compact circle of cat that radiates warmth. The vibration of his purr immediately, a low, steady rumble that seems to resonate through your whole body. The purr is constant, unwavering, a sound of pure contentment. You rest your hand on his back, soft fur, warmth beneath the fluff. You stroke him gently, running your fingers along his spine from neck to tail. Fig purrs louder, the vibration increasing. Miller has noticed your movement. He lifts his head from the rug, his dark eyes focusing on you through the grey fur that falls across his face. He watches you for a moment, then he makes up his mind. He heaves himself to his feet with a low grunt, a sound that speaks of stiff joints and tired muscles, of a body that is old and heavy, but still willing, still capable. He is slow to rise, his old joints requiring a moment to unlock, to remember how to bear weight. He stands with his legs slightly spread, getting his balance, making sure everything is working properly. Then he crosses the kitchen floor with deliberate steps, his nails clicking softly on the wood with each step, a rhythmic sound that you have heard 10,000 times before, a sound that means Miller is coming, that your faithful companion is approaching. He comes to stand beside the armchair. He looks at you with those wise, calm eyes, love in them, loyalty, the deep bond that connects dog and human. His tail wags slowly from side to side, a gentle metronome. You reach down to pat his head, to acknowledge his presence, to return his greeting. He does not try to jump up onto the chair. He is too old for that now, too heavy, and he knows his limitations, accepts them without complaint. Instead, he lowers himself to the floor beside you, carefully, slowly, his front legs folding first, and then his back legs, his body coming down in stages until he is lying on the worn floorboards, pressed. Close against your legs, the weight of him, the solid mass of his body, the warmth radiating from his fur. You adjust your legs slightly to be more comfortable, to allow him to settle completely. He arranges himself carefully, his head resting on his paws, his body curves slightly so that he is in contact with your leg along his entire length. This is his place, beside you, touching you, maintaining that physical connection. The steady rhythm of his breathing, the rise and fall of his chest, the slow, even pace of an animal completely at rest. You reach down with your free hand, the one not stroking Fig, and you rest it on Miller's head, the coarse texture of his fur, the solidity of his skull beneath, the warmth of his body. He leans into your touch, pressing his head more firmly against your hand. His tail thumps once against the floor with a soft thud, a single beat of contentment. His eyes close, the lid slowly descending over those dark eyes. His face relaxes completely, all tension leaving his features. You sit like this for a long time, your hand on Fig's back, your other hand on Miller's head, the fire crackling softly in the stove, the rain continuing its gentle whisper against the windows. The kitchen is golden and warm, glowing with firelight, filled with the smell of wood smoke and tomatoes, and the faint scent of lavender soap still lingering on your hands. The air is thick and comfortable, wrapping around you like a blanket. You feel utterly at peace, utterly safe, utterly content. This is the reward for the work you have done, this moment of stillness and rest, this time when you can simply be, when you do not need to do anything or go anywhere or think about anything in particular. You have earned this rest through your labor, have created this peace through your efforts, and now you can enjoy it fully, without guilt, without the nagging feeling that you should be doing something else. Your body feels heavy now, weighted down by the warmth and the tiredness, and the deep sense of satisfaction that comes from a day well spent, from work completed, from tasks accomplished. Your muscles are loose and relaxed, having released all their tension, all their readiness for action. Your breathing has slowed to match the pace of the animals, slow and deep and even, each breath filling your lungs completely and then releasing fully. Tension you did not even know you were carrying begins to drain away completely, seeping out of your shoulders and your neck and your jaw, flowing down through your body and out through your feet, leaving you lighter, softer, more at ease. The tightness in your lower back from hours of standing at the counter has eased, released by the support of the chair and the warmth of the fire. The ache in your hands from all the chopping and stirring has faded to a pleasant soreness, the kind that speaks of work done rather than injury sustained. You let your head rest fully against the back of the chair, no longer holding it, upright through muscular effort, but allowing it to be supported, allowing the chair to hold you. You close your eyes again. This time you do not open them. The darkness behind your eyelids is soft and velvety, welcoming, a space of rest and quiet where nothing is required of you. The fire pops softly, a small sound in the quiet kitchen. Fig purrs, steady, soothing. Miller breathes, his chest rising and falling in that ancient rhythm. The rain whispers against the glass, and you are here, held by this chair, warmed by this fire, companioned by these animals, existing in this perfect moment where everything is exactly as it should be. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. The work is finished, the jars are sealed, the fire is tended, the rain is falling, and you are home at the heart of Stone Creek Farm, surrounded by everything you need, held in the embrace of this life you have built, this place you have made into a sanctuary. Your breathing slows even more. You become aware of the weight of your eyelids, heavy, thick, as though they are being gently pulled closed by some invisible hand, by gravity itself, by the need for rest that has been building all day and that is now finally being allowed to express itself. You do not fight it, you do not try to stay awake, you let the heaviness come, let it settle over you, let it pull you gently down towards sleep. You are safe here at Stone Creek Farm. The old farmhouse is holding you the way it has held generations before you. Stone walls thick enough to withstand any storm, timber beams strong enough to support the weight of decades, a roof that has shed rain for 100 years and will shed rain for 100 more. The rain is still falling, It will fall through the night, soaking into the fields, into the garden, into the forest beyond, feeding the earth, preparing the soil for winter's rest. But you do not need to think about it. You are inside. You are warm. You are exactly where you belong. The fire will burn through the night, the logs turning slowly to ash, the coals glowing steady and red beneath a blanket of grey. The heat will keep the kitchen warm through the dark hours, will keep the farmhouse breathing in its slow, ancient rhythm. You do not need to tend it. You do not need to worry. The fire knows what to do. The house knows what to do. Everything knows what to do. The jars of tomatoes are cooling on the counter, their seals holding tight, their contents safe and preserved. They are the work of your hands, the gift of your care, the fruit of your labor. They will be there in the morning, still glowing red, still holding summer inside them, ready to be carried down to the cellar, where they will wait through the changing seasons. You do not need to check them. You do not need to move. You can simply rest, knowing that the work is done, that it was done well, that everything is as it should be. Miller is asleep beside you now, his breathing deep and even, his body warm and solid against your legs. He is dreaming, perhaps, but even in his dreams he is here, beside you, keeping watch in his own quiet way, fulfilling his ancient compact to protect and companion. He is safe. You are safe. There is nothing to fear. Fig is a warm weight in your lap, his purr a constant soothing vibration that seems to hum through your bones, that resonates in your chest, that becomes part of your own body's rhythm. He is dreaming too. His paws twitch slightly, but it does not matter. He is here. He is content. He is home. The rain is softer now, barely more than a whisper against the glass, the storm having exhausted itself after hours of steady falling, the clouds having released all the water they carried. The storm has passed its peak. Now it is simply settling in for the night, a gentle presence that will lull the whole farm into sleep, that will create a soft blanket of sound that makes sleep easier, deeper, more restful. The fields are resting beneath the rain. The animals are resting in their warm shelters. The trees are resting in the forest, and you are resting too, sinking deeper into the chair, deeper into the warmth, deeper into the soft, velvety darkness behind your closed eyes. Your breathing is slow and steady, matching the rhythm of the rain, the rhythm of the fire, the rhythm of Miller's breath and Fig's purr, all of it synchronized, all of it moving together in perfect harmony. Everything is in balance. There is no striving, no reaching, no effort required. There is only this, the warmth, the comfort, the deep bone-level knowing that you are safe, that you are home, that you are held. You are safe here at Stone Creek Farm. The world outside can wait. The worries of tomorrow can wait. The work of the next day can wait. Right now, there is only this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, and it is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything you need. The fire crackles one last time, so soft, so gentle that it barely registers in your consciousness. It is simply part of the background now, part of the fabric of the evening, woven together with the rain and the purring and the breathing and the warmth into a tapestry of sound and sensation that cradles you, that holds you, that invites you to let go completely. You let go of the last thread of wakefulness, the last small bit of awareness that was keeping you tethered to the waking world. You let it slip away, like a leaf falling into a stream, carried off by the current, disappearing into the distance, tumbling, turning, finally sinking beneath the surface. And as it goes, you feel yourself floating, weightless, free, held up by nothing but the warmth and the darkness and the deep enveloping peace. Deep sleep is here, rising up around you like water, warm, soft, welcoming, filling all the spaces, covering you completely, pulling you down, gently, irresistibly, into a place where there is no thought, no awareness, no separation between yourself and the world. You are becoming part of the farmhouse, part of the rain, part of the fire, part of the earth itself, dissolving into the warmth, into the darkness, into the deep eternal rest that waits at the end of every day. You are safe, you are warm, you are home, and you are sleeping deeply, peacefully, completely. The rain will fall through the night, gentle, steady. The fire will glow, warming the kitchen. The farmhouse will stand, strong, solid. The animals will sleep beside you. And you will rest, deeply and fully, wrapped in the embrace of Stone Creek Farm, held by the walls and the warmth and the ancient, patient love of this place. The tomatoes will wait in their jars, summer suspended in glass. The land will drink in the rain. The world will turn through the night, and through it all, you will sleep deeply and completely, held by this place that has become home. You are safe here at Stone Creek Farm. Good night.